What if I told you that the very first murder in human history wasn't just a crime of passion, but a story so shocking, so deeply disturbing, that it would literally redefine what it means to be human? Picture this. We're talking about a time when the entire human race consisted of just one family. One father, one mother, and their children. That's it. The whole world. Now imagine two of those children, brothers, mind you, standing on a mountaintop with their offerings to Allah. The tension is so thick you could cut it with a knife. One sacrifice burns bright, consumed by divine fire from heaven itself. The other, rejected, left cold and untouched like a slap in the face from the Almighty. And in that moment, that single, earth-shattering moment of divine judgment, something dark and twisted awakens in the human heart for the very first time. Jealousy so intense it burns like acid. Rage so pure it consumes everything in its path. This is the exact moment when humanity learned what it meant to hate, to kill, to spill innocent blood. But here's what'll really blow your mind. This isn't just some ancient fairy tale. Every single act of violence that has ever happened since that day, every war, every murder, every drop of blood spilled in anger, can be traced back to this one moment, this one choice, this one brother's decision that would curse humanity forever. Welcome back to Epic Ummah, where we dive deep into the most incredible, mind-blowing stories from Islamic history and tradition. I'm your host, and today, we're embarking on a journey into the darkest chapter in human existence, a story that literally changed everything. But before we descend into this shadowed valley, a quick rewind. If you haven't seen last episode about what Adam alayhi salam brought from paradise that changed the world forever, where we uncovered the divine treasures, sacred objects, and fragrances that descended with him from Jannah to earth, tap the I button above and catch up. Understanding Adam alayhi salam's connection to paradise and the legacy he left across continents will give you the complete foundation for what comes next. You'll see how the spiritual longing and gifts we explored last time set the stage for the trials and tragedies that would soon shape all of humanity. Now, today, we're about to explore a tale as deep and haunting as it is universally relevant. You think you know the story of Cain and Abel? Think again. What we're about to uncover together will shatter everything you thought you knew about humanity's first family. This is the story of Qabil and Habil, the sons of Adam alayhi salam and Hawa themselves. And it reads not just as history, but as the world's first, most gripping psychological thriller. Through the incredibly detailed accounts preserved by the legendary historian At-Tabari, a scholar whose traditions reach back to the very companions of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we're going to witness moments when the earth was still young, and every human alive could literally fit around one dinner table. But this isn't just ancient history, folks. This is the blueprint for every family feud, every surge of jealousy, every moment when someone chose evil over good. You'll discover the shocking marriage customs of early humanity, witness the first religious sacrifice, and experience the devastating moment when Allah himself rendered his judgment. Most importantly, you'll understand how this single act of violence would echo through every generation up to our very lives today. So, settle in, open your mind, and join me as we turn the page from the wonders of paradise to the shadows that fell upon our world. This is the story of how a single human choice set the tide for all of history, a story as necessary to understand as it is unforgettable. Let's paint the scene here, and I want you to really wrap your mind around what we're talking about. We're going back to a time so utterly foreign to our modern experience that it's almost impossible to comprehend. Adam alayhi salam and Hawa have been expelled from paradise, cast out of Aden, and they're now trying to build a life on this harsh, unforgiving earth with their growing family. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating, and more than a little shocking to our 21st century sensibilities. According to the authentic traditions recorded by At-Tabari, every single time Hawa gave birth, she didn't just have one child, she had twins. Always, without exception. One boy, one girl, born together like two halves of the same soul. Now here's the part that'll make you do a complete double take. These twin siblings were absolutely forbidden from marrying each other. Instead, Adam alayhi salam would arrange for the boy from one set of twins to marry the girl from a completely different set. It was like a cosmic chess game where Allah was moving the pieces. Think about this for a second. Imagine you're living in this world. There are literally no other people on the entire planet except your immediate family. No neighbors, no distant relatives, no other communities. Nothing. Just Adam alayhi salam, Hawa, and their children. The entire human race could fit around one dinner table. When they had family meetings, it was literally a meeting of all humanity. Into this incredibly unique world came two brothers who would change everything forever. The older brother was called Qabil. Most people today know him as Cain. He was a farmer, spending his days working the soil with his bare hands, coaxing life from the earth under the blazing sun. His younger brother was Habil, known as Abel. While Qabil struggled with crops and weather, Habil was a shepherd, wandering the rolling hills with his flocks, knowing every sheep by name. According to the traditions, Hawa bore children in 120 pregnancies over the course of her life. The first children born were Qabil and his twin sister, a girl so beautiful that her name, Kalima, is still whispered in the ancient texts as a byword for feminine perfection. But it's the relationship between those first two brothers that concerns us today. Because as they grew from boys into men, one fundamental truth became crystal clear. They were as different as night and day. And those differences were about to collide in a way that would literally redefine what it means to be human. The trouble started, as these stories so often do, with a woman. But not just any woman. We're talking about beauty so extraordinary, so absolutely breathtaking, that it would drive two brothers to the very edge of sanity. When Qabil and Habil reached manhood, and we're talking about a time when men matured early, when responsibility came young and heavy, it was time for them to marry and start families of their own. Now remember, in this world, your marriage options were incredibly limited. You married your non-twin sister from another pregnancy, period. There was literally no other choice. No dating apps, no meeting someone at work, no chance encounters at the market. Your spouse was determined by divine law and your father's wisdom. But here's where fate, or perhaps Allah's testing, dealt the cruelest possible hand. Qabil's twin sister was described in the ancient sources as one of the most beautiful women who had ever lived. We're talking about a beauty so stunning, so absolutely perfect, that even the chroniclers thousands of years later couldn't help but comment on it. Picture Helen of Troy, Cleopatra, and every beautiful woman you've ever heard of rolled into one, and you might begin to approach what we're talking about here. Meanwhile, Habil's twin sister was, well, the sources are diplomatically silent on her appearance, but the implication is clear. She wasn't blessed with the same extraordinary beauty. In a world where physical beauty was often seen as a sign of divine favor, this difference must have been painfully obvious to everyone in the family. And suddenly, catastrophically, both brothers wanted the same woman. Qabil's gorgeous twin sister had become the center of a conflict that would tear the very first family apart. Qabil, being the older brother, felt absolutely entitled to her. "She's my twin," he declared, his voice probably shaking with indignation and barely controlled rage. "I was born with her in the same pregnancy. I'm older than you, and I'm Father Adam alayhi salam's heir and successor. Why on earth should I give up my beautiful sister to marry your plain one? It makes no sense. I deserve to marry her more than you do." You can almost hear the entitlement dripping from his words, can't you? The assumption that birth order and biological connection automatically granted him rights over another human being. It's a mindset that would echo through human history, the powerful taking what they want simply because they can. But Adam alayhi salam, remember, this is no ordinary father we're talking about. This is the first man, the prophet of Allah, someone who had walked in paradise and spoken directly with the Almighty himself. Adam alayhi salam had received clear, unmistakable divine guidance about this exact situation. Marriage between twins was absolutely forbidden. No exceptions, no special circumstances, no room for negotiation or compromise. The law was crystal clear and unchangeable. With the weight of divine command behind him, Adam alayhi salam ordered Qabil to give his sister to Habil in marriage, and for Habil to give his sister to Qabil. It was fair, it was just, and it was the only way forward that wouldn't violate Allah's clear commandments. Can you imagine the tension that must have filled that household? The atmosphere must have been absolutely electric with unspoken anger and resentment. Habil, true to his nature, accepted his father's command with grace and humility. He understood that obedience to Allah and respect for his parents came before his personal desires. If this was what Allah wanted, then this was what he would do, regardless of his own preferences. But Qabil? Qabil was absolutely furious. He refused outright to obey his father. "No," he must have shouted. "I won't do it. I won't give up my sister to him." Picture the scene. Adam alayhi salam, the first prophet, the man who had once walked with Allah in paradise, now facing rebellion from his own son. The first case of a child defying a parent in human history. The first time anyone had ever said no to legitimate authority. It must have broken Adam alayhi salam's heart in ways we can barely comprehend. But Adam alayhi salam was wise. Incredibly, supernaturally wise. Instead of forcing the issue or imposing his authority through sheer patriarchal power, he came up with a solution that would let Allah himself render the final judgment. "Both of you," he declared, his voice probably heavy with sadness and disappointment, "will offer a sacrifice to Allah. Whoever's sacrifice is accepted by the Almighty, he will marry the beautiful sister. Let Allah decide." It was brilliant, really. It took the decision out of human hands entirely and placed it squarely in the realm of divine will. Neither brother could argue with Allah's judgment, and both would have to accept whatever decision came from heaven. Now here's where the story takes an absolutely fascinating turn that shows just how intricate and detailed these ancient accounts really are. Adam alayhi salam actually left the family compound during this crucial period. You see, Allah had revealed to him something extraordinary. There was a house on earth, a sacred building that would one day become the holiest site in all of Islam, the Kaaba in Makkah. Listen to this incredible exchange recorded in the traditions. Allah said to Adam alayhi salam, "Adam, do you know that I have a house on earth?" Adam alayhi salam replied with characteristic honesty, "Indeed, I do not. I have a house in Makkah," Allah revealed. "Go there." Can you imagine receiving that command? The first pilgrimage in human history, undertaken by the first man himself. Adam alayhi salam was being called to visit the very spot where millions of Muslims would one day circle in worship, where the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would cleanse the ancient temple of idols, where the hearts of believers would turn in prayer 5 times every day until the end of time. But before leaving on this monumental journey, Adam alayhi salam needed someone to watch over his family. This wasn't just a weekend trip. This was a major expedition across unknown terrain to a distant location. He would be gone for weeks, maybe months. Listen to this incredible detail that shows just how carefully the ancient chroniclers recorded these events. Adam alayhi salam first asked the heavens themselves to guard his children. "Watch over my family while I'm gone," he requested. But the heavens refused the responsibility. He turned to the earth with the same request. "Guard my children safely." But the earth also refused. He addressed the mountains, those ancient, eternal guardians of the landscape. They too refused to take on the burden of protecting Adam alayhi salam's family. Finally, he turned to his sons. And Qabil, oh, the bitter, tragic irony of this moment. Qabil stepped forward eagerly. "Yes, father," he declared, his voice probably full of confidence and false sincerity. "You go ahead on your journey. When you return, you'll find your family in a wonderful, happy state. Everything will be perfect. Trust me." The promise that would become the most devastating lie in human history. So Adam alayhi salam departed for Makkah, probably with a mixture of excitement about his divine mission and worry about leaving his family behind. He was walking toward history's first pilgrimage, unknowingly leaving behind the stage for history's first murder. With their father gone, the two brothers began preparing their sacrifices with an intensity that must have been almost frightening to witness. This wasn't just about marriage anymore. This had become a test of their very worth as human beings, their standing before Allah, their right to exist as favored sons. Habil, the shepherd, went to his flock and selected the most perfect animal he could find. Not just any sheep. This was the finest, fattest, most beautiful ram in his entire herd. An animal he truly loved and valued. One that represented the very best of his life's work. The sources tell us it was so perfect, so magnificent, that it was destined for something extraordinary. Some traditions say this very ram would one day be sent down to serve as the sacrifice that would spare Ishaq, alayhi salam, when Ibrahim, alayhi salam, was commanded to sacrifice his son. Think about what this sacrifice meant to Habil. As a shepherd, his sheep weren't just livestock. They were his companions, his life's work, his daily responsibility. He knew each animal individually, understood their personalities, had probably hand-raised this particular ram from birth. To offer it as a sacrifice wasn't just giving up something valuable, it was giving up something beloved. Qabil, the farmer, brought an offering of grain from his fields. Now this should have been simple, right? Take some of your best produce, present it to Allah, and let divine judgment decide the outcome. But here's the crucial detail that seals his fate forever. A detail so small, so seemingly insignificant, yet so revealing of character that it explains everything that followed. When Qabil was preparing his sheaf of wheat, binding together the ears of grain for his offering, he found one particularly large, beautiful, perfect ear of corn. The best of the best, the crown jewel of his harvest. And what did he do with this perfect grain? The one piece that would have made his offering truly special? He ate it himself. Let that sink in for a moment. He literally consumed the best part of his offering before giving what remained to Allah. It's like preparing a meal for an honored guest and then eating all the good parts yourself before serving them leftovers. The selfishness, the lack of respect, the fundamental misunderstanding of what sacrifice actually means. It's all right there in that one small action. The moment of truth arrived, with the weight of eternity behind it. Both brothers stood with their sacrifices, probably surrounded by the rest of their family, waiting for divine judgment that would reshape their lives forever. The tension must have been absolutely unbearable. In those ancient days, when Allah accepted a sacrifice, He would send down a pure white fire from heaven itself, not earthly fire, but divine flame that came directly from the throne of the Almighty. This wasn't metaphorical or symbolic. This was real, visible, unmistakable supernatural intervention. The fire descended from the heavens like lightning, like the finger of God Himself reaching down to earth, and it consumed Habil's ram completely. Every bit of flesh, every bone, every drop of blood, consumed entirely, until nothing remained but fine ash scattered on the wind. The divine flame had spoken its judgment clearly and unmistakably. Qabil's grain, untouched, rejected, left sitting there like a rebuke, like a slap in the face from the creator of the universe. The offering that had been diminished by selfishness couldn't stand before the purity of divine judgment. Can you picture Qabil's face at that moment? The absolute shock, the disbelief, the crushing humiliation of having his offering publicly rejected while his younger brother's was accepted with such dramatic divine approval? In front of his entire family, in front of the woman he desperately wanted to marry, he had been found wanting by Allah Himself. But it wasn't just disappointment that filled Qabil's heart in that moment. Something far darker, far more dangerous was awakening for the very first time in human history. Pure, undiluted rage. Jealousy so intense it felt like poison in his veins. A hatred so consuming that it would literally redefine what it meant to be human. "I will kill you," Qabil snarled at his brother, his voice probably shaking with barely controlled fury. "I will kill you to prevent you from marrying my sister. If I can't have her, then you won't either." The first death threat in human history. The first time one person had ever contemplated deliberately ending another's life. The moment when humanity crossed a line from which there would be no return. But listen, just listen to Habil's response. This might be one of the most beautiful and heartbreaking quotes in all of recorded history. Allah accepts only from those who fear Him. If you stretch out your hand to kill me, I shall not stretch out my hand to kill you. Think about those words for a moment. The world's first murder victim, standing face to face with his killer, and his response is complete submission to Allah and total refusal to fight back. Even knowing, somehow knowing, that he was about to die, Habil wouldn't raise a hand in violence against his brother. He continued, and these words echo through every generation. "I want you to bear my sin and your sin, and become one of the companions of the fire, for that is the recompense of the unjust." Habil was literally offering his life rather than compromise his principles. Rather than sin by fighting back, he chose to become humanity's first martyr. What happened next would scar humanity forever and establish patterns of violence that continue to this very day. Qabil began hunting his brother like a wild animal. The world's first manhunt, taking place across mountains and valleys that had never witnessed human violence before. Poor Habil tried to escape by running from peak to peak, hiding wherever he could. But in this empty world, there was literally nowhere to run. The psychological terror must have been overwhelming. Imagine being hunted by someone who knows all your habits, all your favorite places, someone who shares your memories, your childhood, your family, someone who should love you, but who instead wants you dead. For days, maybe weeks, this deadly game of cat and mouse continued. Habil, exhausted and starving, still trying to care for his sheep even as he fled for his life. Qabil, consumed by rage, tracking his brother with the patience of a predator. Then came the moment that would change everything. One fateful day, Qabil found his brother sleeping on a mountainside, probably exhausted from days of running. His sheep were grazing peacefully nearby, unaware they were about to witness the first murder in human history. In his rage and jealousy, Qabil picked up a massive rock from the mountainside. Imagine the weight of that stone, the moment of decision when he could have stopped, could have chosen differently. Instead, he brought that rock down with all his strength and crushed his brother's skull. The first human murder, the first deliberately spilled blood. The sound of that impact must have echoed across the mountains like thunder. But here's where the story becomes even more devastating. Qabil stood there over his brother's broken body, completely lost. Death was unknown to humanity at this point. Nobody had ever died before. Qabil had literally no idea what to do with a corpse, so he simply left his brother lying there naked on the mountain and walked away. No burial, no ceremony, no dignity in death, just a body abandoned on a hilltop. But then, Allah's mercy shone through even in this darkest moment. He sent two ravens, brothers just like Qabil and Habil. The ravens fought, and one killed the other. But then, something beautiful happened. The surviving raven began to dig a hole in the earth with its beak and claws, working carefully. It gently placed its brother's body in the hole and covered it with soil. Qabil watched this scene and was overwhelmed with shame for the first time in his life. "Woe to me," he cried out. "Am I incapable of being like that raven, so as to conceal the secret parts of my brother?" And so humanity learned about burial from birds. Even in our darkest moment, divine guidance was available through Allah's creatures. When Adam alayhi salam returned from his historic pilgrimage to Makkah, expecting to find his family in that wonderful state Qabil had promised, he discovered a scene of unimaginable horror. One son dead, the other a murderer, his family shattered beyond repair. Adam alayhi salam's grief was so profound that he composed what might be humanity's first poem of mourning. The land and those upon it have changed. The face of the earth is now ugly and dusty. Everything tasty and colorful has changed. The cheerfulness of a handsome face has become rare. But he received a chilling reply, some say from Iblis himself. "Father of Habil, both have been killed. The one alive has become like the one slaughtered and dead. Both sons were lost, one to physical death, the other to the spiritual death that comes from becoming a murderer." So what can we learn from this devastating ancient tragedy that still echoes through every headline, every act of violence, every family torn apart by jealousy and rage? This isn't just a story about two brothers and an ancient family dispute. This is the moment when humanity crossed a line from which there has never been any return. Every war that has ever been fought, every murder that has ever been committed, all of it can trace its roots back to this single moment. When Qabil chose violence over submission to Allah's will. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ taught us that Qabil shares in the responsibility for every soul that is wrongfully killed, because he was the first to institute killing. Every victim of violence throughout human history, Qabil bears partial responsibility for all of it, because he opened that door. He established that precedent. But there's another lesson that's equally important and far more hopeful. Look at Habil's response to his brother's threats. Even facing certain death, he chose submission to Allah over violence. He chose faith over fear, principle over self-preservation. In a world that constantly teaches us to fight back, Habil's example reminds us that sometimes the greatest strength lies in refusing to do evil, even when evil is being done to us. This story also reveals something profound about sacrifice and worship. Qabil's offering was rejected not because it was grain instead of an animal, but because of the attitude behind it. When he kept the best part for himself and gave Allah the leftovers, he revealed a heart that was selfish and distant from true submission. The lesson is clear. Allah doesn't judge our offerings by their material value, but by the sincerity behind them. The story shows us how jealousy can literally transform us into something monstrous. Qabil wasn't born evil. He was a normal human being who shared meals and childhood memories with the brother he would murder. But jealousy consumed him. The inability to accept Allah's judgment, the refusal to submit to divine wisdom. These attitudes created the first murderer. And the terrifying truth is that these same spiritual diseases exist in every human heart. We all have the capacity to become either Habil or Qabil, depending on our choices when faced with disappointment or perceived unfairness. Think about the modern applications. How many times have you felt burning jealousy when someone else got recognition you thought you deserved? How many workplace conflicts and family disputes are really variations on this same theme? People fighting over resources or status, unable to accept that Allah's distribution might not match their personal desires. The story of Qabil and Habil is the story of every human heart's fundamental choice. Will we submit to Allah's wisdom, even when it goes against our preferences? Or will we let our ego drive us toward destruction? What aspects of this incredible ancient story resonate most deeply with you? Have you ever experienced jealousy so intense it scared you? How do you think your own life, your own family, your own relationships might be different if everyone involved chose the path of Habil over the path of Qabil? And perhaps most importantly, when faced with your own moments of disappointment or perceived injustice, which brother's example will you follow? I want to hear your thoughts, your reflections, your own experiences with these timeless themes. Drop your comments below. I read every single one and often find that your insights add dimensions to these stories that I hadn't considered. Your perspectives matter, and they help build a community of people who are serious about learning from history instead of just being entertained by it. Thank you so much for taking this incredible journey with me back to humanity's most foundational moment. If this story moved you, if it challenged you, if it made you think differently about jealousy, family relationships, or the choices we all face between good and evil, then please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We're building something special here at Epic Ummah, a community of people who understand that history isn't just about memorizing dates and names, but about learning profound truths that can transform how we live today. Every subscriber helps us reach more people with these incredible stories that our ancestors preserved for us at great cost. Until then, keep exploring, keep learning, and remember, history isn't just about the past. It's about understanding who we are, where we came from, and most importantly, who we can choose to become. Every day, in small ways and large, we're all writing the next chapter of humanity's story. Make sure yours is one that would make Habil proud. Assalamu alaikum, and I'll see you in the next video.